Welcome. I'm Michael Bickert. Thanks for joining me today as we explore concepts with the objective of improving your management skills and growing your business. Grab a notepad, grab a pen right now because I want you to jot down some notes. I want you to make a commitment to yourself that you'll jot down some sort of action item that you can implement in your business today. Implement something, change for the positive. That's what this is all about. We need to drive your business forward with meaningful change day after day. All right, so behavior or results. I want to talk to you today about whether you should reward behavior or results. And it may not be as intuitive as you think. In fact, as I was contemplating this, and recently thinking about it, I thought to myself that I'm not so sure that I have all the answers as it relates to this. So I want to explore this concept with you together. And what you may want to do is right now, pause the video and contemplate it for yourself. Answer the question as if there was a right or a wrong here. Should you reward behavior or results? And we're talking about, both with your people in your organization, in your business, and also with yourself. Think about, how are you rewarded? You might say, well, as the business owner, I'm only rewarded when I get results. I mean, if you don't get profit, you don't get the rewards and your business could go under, your business could fail, and everybody would be affected. And so when you're considering things in life in general and in your business, what is most important, the behaviors or the results? And so let's just keep exploring this a little bit and think to ourselves the various ways that this impacts your business and how you might want to frame this, and therefore what will you do in your business and what changes will you make based on any conclusions we come up with here. So the first thing I think of is, okay, well, let's say for the sake of argument that we are going to reward results. Because you think, like I said, as the example, that you only get rewarded as a business owner as you get results. Results are what matter. And so if you think of it in a sports analogy, winning is what matters. And to the extent that you lose every game, you're not going to be rewarded very handsomely. You're probably not going to enjoy yourself, and those professional athletes are not going to be successful by losing. And so therefore results matter. And you might think the same thing in business. And if you were to reward results only for yourself and your people, would that be fair? Well, first thing we need to look at is, are you in control of those things that give you the results? And I would say, generally speaking, not. I mean, if we were talking about a particular task that had such a causation that, you pull a lever and a particular trapdoor opens, as a result, you say, well, okay, well, I can reward the results because I want the trapdoor open. And so every time the trapdoor opens, I'm going to recognize and reward the person for accomplishing what we're paying that person to accomplish. The whole reason that person is on the team is we need that trapdoor open, so it's the result of opening the trapdoor that matters. And this is just a silly example. Of course, you can insert into that example any particular result that you're looking for in your organization. But I think that really that's a non-issue, because in my example, there's a causation there where pulling a lever opens a trap door. So in fact, you could argue that theoretically, it's the exact same thing. If you were to reward the behavior of pulling the lever, you would be rewarding the result of opening the trap door. But that's not the way the real world works in your business. There's so much uncertainty, and there are many things that we are trying to accomplish, many results, objectives that we're pursuing that aren't always obvious, and that those things aren't, that there isn't a causation. There's a particular behavior that we know that tends to lead toward a result, a desired outcome, but it doesn't always work out that way. So if you've only focused on rewarding results, you would miss out on, it wouldn't be fair, I guess, is what I want to say, is that sometimes it might be beyond someone's control. There might be market conditions, there could be something outside of an individual's control that determines whether or not the behavior is going to lead to the result consistently, or at what degree will it lead to the result. So I think of also the another way to frame this is to look at it through the lens of somebody who is particularly gifted, or maybe they have some edge of some sort, and they succeed. That is, they get results in spite of their efforts, in spite of their behaviors. So we see that, and I always default to a fitness analogy. There are some people who are genetically gifted, and in spite of terrible nutrition and workout plans that really are dangerous maybe, and they would not be generally effective for the population as a whole, and they still get great results. And people will look at that and they'll say, oh, I should emulate that. And it's actually a case of them succeeding, accomplishing results in spite of doing the wrong behaviors. So again, if you defaulted to the position that you were going to reward results, not behavior, you can end up rewarding somebody for something that they really shouldn't be rewarded for. And you're looking at strictly the results. You may say again, well, I don't care. The person's particularly gifted and they're getting results regardless, and that's what I want to reward. I would look at that and I'd say, okay, but could they get better results if we rewarded behavior in that case, if we would encourage them and teach them behavior? Now let's think back to Stephen Covey and the concept of paradigms. He would say, we frame the understanding of paradigms through the lens of a mental map in that analogy. And if you have the wrong mental map, then attitudes and behaviors don't matter. If you were trying to find an address in New York with a map of Chicago, your attitude wouldn't matter because you would still get lost. You just wouldn't care you're lost, and your behavior wouldn't matter. So if you double down your efforts, you just get lost twice as fast. But with the right paradigm, then attitudes and behaviors do matter. So I guess if we accept all that, we have to say, well, before we even worry about the rewarding the right behaviors and attitudes, we need to make sure that we have the right paradigm. We have to understand, and we're not operating on some flawed premise. So we're going to say, for the purposes of today's discussion, that you understand what behaviors actually do lead to desired outcomes, predictable outcomes. You have a recipe for success that you followed for long enough. You have enough data points that you can reasonably be assured of a particular behavior leading to a specific outcome, a desired outcome and result. If that's the case, then I think we can say, well, let's reward behaviors, but not so fast. Because, when you think about it, you go, well, wait a minute here. If we just reward behaviors, we can end up with somebody who is never gaining results. We can end up with somebody that, despite their best efforts and behaviors, and they're doing, seemingly anyway, they are doing what they're being asked to do. They're following a particular process, and yet the results are terrible. You might have somebody in an example who follows a recipe very closely, and then you taste the final dish and you're like, oh, this is awful. And it may be that, I don't know. You might say, well, if you follow the recipe close enough, it can't be that the results aren't predictable. Yes, that is a benefit of documented, well-documented instructions, but you got to go again in reality. We're talking theoretical and then practical. In your business, is everything really well documented where people can follow things that closely? And are you tracking? Or do sometimes people think they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do and that behavior, but they're getting no results? And so they're sort of, in the analogy there, they're creating a terrible dish. It doesn't taste good at all. Maybe they're just slightly messing up a few of the steps or a few of the ingredients, and everything doesn't turn out. That's sort of the theoretical example, but in practical terms, in your business, you give freedoms and autonomy to your people, and you only have so much time to train and oversee. Nobody wants to micromanage and look at every detail of what somebody's doing to make sure that they are following everything. So in general, when we talk about rewarding behavior, you're going to communicate in some way. Maybe you have a multimedia standard operating procedure and you train your people, you take the time to onboard them correctly and train them, and then you say, please do this. We're all people, we're all human, we will make mistakes, we will deviate, and can you be there to catch that each and every time? So theoretically, you may say, well, if they did the right behavior every time, then that would be the right thing, we could reward that. But we know in practical terms that people may have the best intentions and they may be intending to execute the behaviors you expect, and you are therefore rewarding them for those things, and yet they're getting no results. So let's get a little bit more specific in the context of business. So you're paying a person a salary, and you're expecting them to do steps A, B, C, and D each and every time to get the desired result. And that's an example of rewarding behavior. You're going to teach them to do A, B, C, and D, and you're hoping that it'll lead to whatever desired outcome and result it is, the accomplishment of a particular objective. Or if you were going to reward results instead, you might pay a commission. You say, I don't care if you do A, B, C, D, E, F, or G. I don't care how you get there. As long as you get the desired outcome, we are going to pay you. We're going to pay you more performance-based and commission-based or bonus-based, that kind of thing. So that's how this sometimes manifests in business. Or I'm going to pat you on the back. So we talk about remuneration. So when we talk about rewarding people, it's often their remuneration and the recognition, the perks, those types of things that go along with it. So are you going to be patting somebody on the back for getting a particular outcome? Or are you going to be patting them on the back and recognizing them, hey, good job, I saw you did steps A, B, and C, and D automatically. But why I say it's not so obvious is because the person could be doing A, B, C, and D and not getting the desired outcome. In fact, if you had two people doing it the same, you would probably notice that somebody is getting better results than the other. And should you be rewarding them the same? You see, it's not so clear. The more you dig into this, I hope I'm not confusing you or being too convoluted. It's really kind of a simple concept, but it's not a simple answer. Should you be rewarding the behavior that should lead to the results, or should you be rewarding the results? And the more I thought about this, it occurred to me that it really depends on your business, and it depends on the situation and how predictable specific behaviors are. So and I've also thought it also depends, since this is sort of a human resource issue. We're talking about how you might reward your team, how you might recognize your team and yourself to get desired outcomes. Let's not forget about yourself and in everyday life. And should you be rewarding yourself based on results or outcome? Results and outcome or behavior. But I was saying that it's a human resource, and as humans, we are all different, and not everybody responds to the same thing. In fact, I thought in my career about the people who responded better to a remuneration and recognition program that rewarded results more than behaviors, and vice versa. And both, I've been successful with both, and I've had failures with both. What I would say is the exception to the rule is the person who is getting rewarded strictly by outcome and results being the default position or the best option. When I look at where that has been most effective, it's been with those unconsciously competent superstar high performers. And when you talk to these people and say, hey, we're going to reward you based on behavior, not results, they don't like that idea at all. They're like, they know that they're able to accomplish more. They're just gifted, and they know, and they say, no. And if they're in management, they also think that other people won't respond accordingly. But that's managing by the rule, or the exception, not the rule. You always want to manage by the rule, not the exception. So if we agree that, well, by definition, they're a superstar because they are scarce, their talent is uncommon, then to try to reward everybody the way you would reward someone like that is managing by the exception, not the rule. So instead you might think, well, if I do have a superstar, I might have a separate way of recognizing and rewarding that individual. If I do have an outlier, I might come up with a separate program, or I might create something that works for everyone, that if you get uncommon results, then you are actually going to be rewarded separately. And that's where a bonus could come in and that kind of thing. But I think that's one of the reasons that you, as a manager or as an entrepreneur, business owner, you might have defaulted to the position that results are what matter most, and that's what you wish to that's what you wish to reward in your organization. And many of you are probably making the mistake of doing that. If you're looking at how you're paying your people, how you're recognizing your people, and you're focused so much on results, it may be because you are projecting onto your people that which would motivate you, that which you look at in your own life and you say, hey, well, this is how I get rewarded, and results are what matters for me, and I've always been that way, and I like to get results, and I'm a passionate person, I'm a hard worker, and so that's what I'll do for my people. But you're not going to make your people they're not necessarily cut from the same cloth as you. And nor should you necessarily try to recruit people that are just like you. It is a futile endeavor to look strictly for superstars. And if you're an outlier, if you're a high performer, and that's why you're successful in business, and that's why you're able to be in business or in management, then we can go right back and agree that this might be the exception, not the rule. I should manage by the rule, not the exception, which I think takes us back again to, in most cases, generally speaking, you are better off trying to reward behaviors and not specific results. Another thing that I think of on that is what you're trying to do is create habits and a culture in your organization. These can be very, very powerful. And if you take that fitness analogy I had, where somebody who is naturally gifted and they have incredibly good genetics and they're succeeding in spite of themselves, you don't want to create habits among the rest of your team who witness this person doing the wrong behaviors, maybe with the wrong attitude, and getting results and getting rewarded and recognized always for that. That would spread a culture and habits in your organization that would create a little bit of chaos. You don't want that. So again, generally speaking, go back to the behaviors. And if you think in your life, those things that you want to accomplish, you don't always know exactly how to do those things. So we use a fitness analogy and you decide, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to double my strength. I don't know if I'm going to be able to lose X amount of pounds of body fat, or put on X number of pounds of muscle, or whatever, be able to run a marathon. You may not know exactly, but what you can do is you can make predictions and strategize of what things will lead to that outcome predictably. You might think, well, if I start to exercise 4 times a week, or whatever it is, you start to formulate a plan, those are the behaviors. And since it's not a causation thing, like, well, pulling that lever and it opens the trap door, exercise does not necessarily lead very predictably to a specific outcome. Everybody's a little bit different. And so what you want to do is you start to form the habits and the culture and the discipline. And so when you think of these things as being effective in your own personal life, well, I'm going to eat as nutritiously as I know, and then as I can educate myself and make sure that I'm operating on the right paradigm, I might tweak my behaviors. So I want to talk about that tweaking and observation. That was the other thing that occurred to me about this, is that you need to be tracking both. You need to be tracking behaviors and results, because that's where you're going to be able to differentiate and see and drill down and try to figure out, analyze where a problem may exist. So let's say you had 2 people doing the same things, doing the same behaviors. They're being rewarded, recognized the same. Maybe their pay is identical. And one of them's getting better results. Well, that would, give you pause and you would look and analyze and investigate a little bit and start to look, get a little bit more granular, and you maybe watch over the person who is getting inferior results. Maybe you would pat the person on the back who's getting the superior results, and then you would go and work with the person with the inferior results to see what is it they're doing. And you may just determine that you got a bad fit there. Maybe the person's just not cut out for the job and you may have to change that person. But hopefully what you'll be able to see is that by looking at their behaviors, you might be able to tweak some of the behaviors. They think they're doing it the way you've instructed them or trained them, or they think they're doing it the same way that the other team member's doing it who's getting superior results. But in fact, they're not. And you can provide a little mentoring and coaching to that person to affect their behaviors. And now you can reward and recognize when they are doing those proper behaviors. So when they respond to your coaching and your mentoring favorably, they have that positive attitude and they tweak what they're doing. Now you once again reward that because it's the behavior you're looking for and it will lead to the results. So once again, I always default back to the importance of measurement. If you're not measuring these things, then this is a bit of a moot conversation of what you should be focused on, rewarding and recognizing results or behavior. Because if you're not actually measuring, how would you know whether you're getting the outcomes you're looking for? How would you know if people are doing the behaviors you're looking for? Steps A, B, C, and D. Another thing I consider on this is that hopefully your organization is not willing to pursue a desired outcome, the accomplishment of objectives, or results at any cost. That is to say, you're looking for your people to act in ways which are moral, ethical, and legal. And if you were just focusing on results, you might send that message. You might get that culture where people are like, all they care about is getting results. They don't care how I do it, and people cheat. So you think of in sports where you're like, well, I don't care how the person scores the goal or wins the race as long as they do. That's not true, because when we find out that somebody cheated in some way, all of a sudden we are no longer willing to reward them in the same way. And it goes the same in your business. You don't want to reward results that encourage bad behavior. And sometimes you inadvertently do so when you focus too strongly on results. Again, you need to track and you need to inspect what you expect. And when you expect your people to behave in a way that upholds your brand and the integrity of your organization and your core values, you need to be making sure that you recognize that as well. Somebody might get inferior results, but they don't push the envelope in terms of honesty and things like that, and communicating with customers. They're always transparent and straightforward with everybody. And then somebody over here is, they may overpromise a little bit and getting pretty close to the line of whether they're being completely forthright in all of their communication and presentation style, and yet they get better results. You don't want to encourage that. If you just focus on the results, you may be encouraging some poor behaviors, because a person, just wants to get that recognition, wants to get that extra remuneration, pay, whatever bonus that you have. So look at that stuff as well. And it comes back again to inspecting what you expect and measuring so that you can tweak. So in summary, I don't think it's a binary that there's only one way to do things. In business, it very seldom is that way. So when you have outliers and outstanding individuals in your organization who've worked with you long enough, and you have that trust with them, and you go, you know what, I can rely on this person to uphold my brand and be honest and do everything morally, legally, ethically, responsibly, then you might give them a little bit more freedom, and you might tweak things where you are rewarding them more for results because that's somebody you want to keep happy. But generally speaking, what I've observed in management, and I think you will as well, is that you're better off rewarding the behaviors. Try to figure out exactly, operate with the right paradigm, make sure you have the right recipe, the right mental map, and the right methodologies, and then train those with your people. Train your people to do A, B, C, and D, and you'll get more predictable outcomes. And then measure so that you can analyze when they're not getting what everyone else is, or you have an average that you're looking for. It's like, well, we should have a closing average if we're talking about sales, or we should have a a defect tolerance within our production line, that we shouldn't mess up the recipe very often, but there is a tolerance that we allow for that's predictable. And when there's outliers, that's where you go and investigate. The outlier who is performing much better than expected, you will investigate. And the person who is performing much worse than expected, you'll investigate, and you'll have to tweak and strategize accordingly. That is my look at whether you should reward and track results or behaviors, and I hope you got something out of it. Did I leave something out completely? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Give me some pushback. What is your experience? And in your business right now, which of those two are you focused on? What about in your own life? Are you focused more on results to the point where it actually gets discouraging because you're not getting results? Maybe you should be considering, even with yourself, maybe I'm gonna just look at focusing a little bit more on the behaviors and see if those start to lead me in the right direction. And then strategize and tweak accordingly. Leave a comment and let me know what you'd like to push back on, or what you'd like to suggest. If there's more questions you have, leave those in the comments. Leave something that we can all learn from, because we need to learn from one another. Perpetual refinement.